Now, following the disaster that is the aftermath of the Iowa caucuses, DNC Chairman Tom Perez is facing calls to step down. Uh, this is after, of course, again, that the whole conflagration with the Iowa caucus that points at possible party mismanagement, which caused the delay of results in the first contest in the 2020 Democratic primary. We are still currently, as of this taping, waiting the results that will be released in about an hour and a half. But only half of those results will be released. So now, following this, multiple petitions on change.org have called for Perez to resign his position as chair of the DNC. One of the most popular ones had about 13,000 signatures. Now, that's earlier this morning. There's plenty more. Not only that, but resign Tom Perez had also trended on Twitter overnight. So there's a lot of people that are very unhappy about the job that Tom Perez is doing as head of the DNC. So now let's go to Common Dreams here. This is an article by Owen Higgins, and he explains that while Perez and the DNC were not technically in charge of the process Monday night, the National Party's influence on the process likely led to the caucus meltdown. They explained that top party level officials' concerns about Russian interference in 2016 have created a cottage industry of technology security experts offering protective services for elections. And I say experts because, as you can see, the so-called experts at Shadow kind of messed up. And there was actually a statement released from the Iowa Democratic Party that said basically it was an error in the code, right? It was a coding error. They were receiving all the information, but they were not sending it all out because of coding error inside of this app. So learn to code is the message here. And that's why you cannot trust, by the way, the cottage industry. But this is, I think, is a good example of incompetence and self-dealing. And so I'll explain that, right? Now, this phone app used in Iowa is called Shadow, it's developed by Shadow Incorporated. And it was very secretive. According to an article in the Gray Zone, the firm was staffed by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama campaign veterans and created by a Democratic dark money nonprofit backed by hedge fund billionaires, including a man named Seth Klarman. Seth Klarman is a prolific funder of pro-settler Israel lobby organizations, as well as a large Democratic donor. Klarman has contributed directly to Pete Buttigieg's campaign. Shadow was also funded by, again, the Buttigieg campaign, the Nevada Democratic Party, which has since, by the way, announced that it will not be using the app in the upcoming Nevada caucus. So we're not going to have that kind of disaster, hopefully, in Nevada. Okay. So back to Perez, right? So he's leading the DNC. The DNC, I guess, contracted with Shadow, which, again, is a good example of corrupt self-dealing with all these different connections with the Buttigieg campaign. For his role in this, as well as changing debate rules, a lot of activists, of course, have been pushing for Perez's ouster. Now, on Friday, news that the DNC was going to adjust its debate rules to allow billionaire Mike Bloomberg onto the stage drew outrage and accusations that the party was allowing a billionaire to come in and buy his way into the election. Bloomberg, just several days before the rules change, gave over $300,000 to the DNC. Now, Sean King, activist, said, "I'll be glad to see Tom Perez step down from the DNC. After a clusterfuck of an election in the state that the DNC had a year to prepare for, that was preceded by the DNC changing its rules for the billionaire to buy his way into the race. The man has lost the respect of millions. I don't really think he had any respect to begin with." Ever since Tom Perez was chosen to run, by the way, in an election for DNC chair that Keith Ellison, by all rights, was going to win. He was pushed into the running by Obama and Clinton, staffers, people who had worked on their campaigns to go and take over the DNC to make sure that Ellison, a Sanders delegate and Sanders supporter, did not win that position. But don't worry, Ellison got the vaunted position of co-chair, which basically has no power. Or I think either co-chair or a position that they had invented to placate Mr. Ellison. So there's that. Now, Sanders supporter and Democratic Party activist Kat Bretzler also echoed King's concerns and emphasized the damage the DNC was doing to its own self. Quote, the Democratic establishment has been screaming that our movement is sowing divisiveness and it's going to ruin party unity, but they're nailing that to the wall all by themselves. Changing rules for the DNC threshold for debate access to allow billionaires, but not POC candidates, and this. Now remember, Cory Booker, Julian Castro, they all talked to the DNC to try to adjust their rules so that the debate stage included at least one candidate of color, right? Well, the DNC refused, Perez refused, but now, after 8 debates, now Tom Perez is saying, oh, you know what? We are going to change our debates. We're going to change the threshold so we can have a billionaire come and be on the stage. And by the way, Mike Bloomberg, again, gave $300,000 several days before this. And Mike Bloomberg, since Biden was mostly considered to be the next one to fail, right? At least when it comes to Iowa, and not do well in Iowa. And we don't have the official results yet, but there's likely he's going to be in 4th or 5th place in Iowa. It's a disaster, right? So nobody has any faith in Joe Biden. And so Bloomberg is the next, I guess, best hope. Bloomberg or Buttigieg, somebody. Now, Buttigieg is going to do terribly with black voters. He's going to get crushed in South Carolina. And so really the major hope is Bloomberg. And yet Bloomberg also has a terrible past when it comes to, for example, policies like stop and frisk. But he hasn't been nailed with that yet. So getting him in the debate is actually probably going to be bad. And there are a lot of DNC members that are actually against this as well. So there are a lot of DNC members that are like, hey, this is not a good look for us either. And so maybe they would be on to supporting removing Tom Perez as DNC chair. Not sure. I hope so. But anyway, one more statement here. This is Vice Senior Staff writer Laura Wagner, who said, the lesson is that the party will stymie Sanders' chances one way or another, and the Vermont senator supporters will need to accept the need to fight on a number of fronts to succeed. I think she's right. Quote, the DNC is corrupt and incompetent, or both, and if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, it will be in spite of the party's leadership. Absolutely. She's not wrong. And look, if I've learned one thing, is that people in power, they don't give up their power easily. And while we don't know entirely what happened in Iowa, if it was a conspiracy to stop Bernie or pure incompetence or just a case of self-dealing gone wrong with a company that wasn't obviously up to the task, what's clear is that all of this happened on Tom Perez's watch. And that's just another piece of evidence why Tom Perez should not be DNC chair. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.